Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. On this channel I talk about my financial journey. In today's video actually I am going to be talking about real estate. So as you guys know or might not know, if you're following my Instagram you would know, but I am on my real estate journey and I am trying to get my first property, which is going to be an investment property. And it's been a ride and I've learned so many things that I had to write them down. I was like, yeah, these are actually, really important things that people that want to buy a house, a property, whether it's like a residential property or an investment property, they should know. So today I'm just going to touch on three major things that I've learned. So the first thing is hidden costs. Now when you're buying a property, right, the first thing they say, you have to have your down payment, and your down payments can be 3%, it can be 20% depending on what you're buying. If you're buying like an investment property, it's between 20 to 25%. If you're buying a residential property, it's 3%. Now if you're buying a house of like 300k and they say 3%, that's about $9,000, right? Now in your head you're thinking, oh okay, $9,000, not really that bad, right? But the thing is, there are other hidden costs involved in this. There is inspection costs. Inspection is when before you buy the house, there is a period that is called due diligence. That's the period that an inspector has to come and look at the house and make sure that the house is actually in good standing. Basically, let me actually tell you guys a mini story time. So there was this property that I was going to buy. The property was listed for 350k, and I had negotiated, well, my agent had negotiated with the seller's agent and we brought it down to 340k, and they were going to pay I think 2k in closing costs. And I was so excited because it was like a 4-bed 3-bath, like it just had everything that I wanted. The only thing is that I didn't like about the house is the fact that the location was not really in a place I would want, but since it was an investment property I was like, okay, sure, no problem, that's fine, I can deal with that, right? Because in the next 3-4 years that place is going to be fully developed, right? So I go in, I like the house and everything, and then the inspector comes and does inspection, and guys, this house it had a lot of issues. It had like structural issues. The wall was falling, like a part of the wall was falling. It had foundation issues. It had mold. It had so many things. Every house is going to have some sort of malfunction, right? Because no house is perfect. But the thing is, if it's a malfunction such as maybe the door is bad or a window is broken, that's fine. Even if it's like the faucet of the sink is broken, that's fine. But the fact that the house had like actual structural issues, like the inspector said the house was moving basically, I just had to back away from that deal because I was like, yeah, this is going to take, it's basically going to take almost rebuilding the house for us to fix this. So something like that, right? Now that's inspection. I had to pay for the inspection, right? And I didn't even get to buy the house. So that's like an expense. That's money that has gone out of my account, right? So there's inspection costs, there's closing costs, right? Closing cost is the money you pay at the end of your transaction. Basically, you finally decide on the house you buy, you go through all the process, you get the money from the bank, and you decide, okay, basically you and the seller decide, yes, the seller has given you the house, and then you buy the house from the seller. At the end of that deal, there are fees to be paid, so that is the closing cost. So of course you're also going to pay for the closing costs, but the trick is you or the seller could pay for the closing costs. The closing cost doesn't have to be you, the buyer, paying for it. You could negotiate in your contract for the seller to also pay for the closing costs. The house that I told you that I was going to buy, remember that the seller was going to contribute $2,000 to the closing costs. Then the other thing is like property taxes, right? The other thing is like NS money. That's NS fees. NS fees that's the money that you give to the seller. It's basically put in some kind of account, and it's to show that you're actually serious about buying the house. The time that you pay for the NS money is usually around the due diligence period, right? And if maybe after they give you a certain amount of time, I think between 5 to 7 days, and if after that you still go ahead and you want to get the house and then later on you back out, you're not going to get the NS money back. So that was the first thing that I learned, that there are a lot of hidden costs in getting a property. The second thing that I learned in purchasing a property is that interest rates is king, guys. Oh my god. So during the pandemic, interest rates were really low. Like interest rates was like 2%, 3%. My partner actually purchased a property during that period, and his interest rate was about 2.1% for one of his property, and I think about 4% for the other property that he has. But for me, I am trying to make my own purchase, and the interest rate right now that I'm being given is about 6.5%.
Get out of here. Get out of here, man. Shit, I'm saying.
Now, when you look at this, right, if you're purchasing a house that is 300k and someone else purchased a house that is also 300k but with 2% interest rates, you guys are going to be paying an entirely different amount of money in mortgage, right? The other person who purchased the house at a 2% interest rate is going to be paying much less each month than you who also purchased at 6.5% interest rate, just because your interest rate is higher. So that's one thing that I also learned. Like, if right now I could, get a lower interest rate, I would. But of course, the market, your credit score, and a host of other things determines the interest rates that you are going to be given. Then the third thing that I learned is, if you can, get the seller to pay the closing costs. Closing costs is a lot of money. Like, if you're paying a down payment of maybe 12k, closing costs could be up to 10k thereabouts, depending. If it is possible, if you can get the seller to either pay the whole closing cost or give you like a huge sum of the closing cost, that would be great. Now, usually from my negotiations, what I've realized is usually the listing price of the house would be about 300k, and that's it. So I will tell my agent, okay, I like this house, but I'm not going to pay 300k. I'm going to pay, I usually reduce it by 15k. I'll say I'll pay 285k, and tell them, okay, they are going to contribute 8k in closing costs, right? And then usually the seller's agent will come back and say, okay, no, we can give you the house, yes, for 285k, but you're going to have to pay the closing costs. Now, a lot of people will jump on this deal, but for me, I prefer to actually have the seller pay the closing costs, because that means that I am not spending as much of my money right now. I know people will say, okay, no, but since you're getting the house for 285k, that's still 15k less. But the thing you remember is, you're not paying that 285k everything right now. You're paying it over 30 years. So first of all, 285k right now, the amount you're going to be paying right now in mortgage, if you're paying 2200 now in mortgage, 2200 now, it's not the same as 2200 in the next 15 years, because inflation is going to balance things out. Inflation is going to reduce that money. So personally, the way I prefer to do it is, I have the seller contribute a large sum of money to the closing costs, or if they can even pay the whole thing, sure. So one of the deals I had was 380k, right? And I asked if they could do 365 and pay 9k in closing costs, and the seller came back, well, the seller's agent came back to renegotiate and say, well, they can do 365, but they're not going to do closing costs. And I was like, okay, if you can not do closing costs with 365, then I'm going to have it back to 375. So I increased the price back to 375, which only removes 5k, right, from the listing price. I said I'm going to have it at 375, and then have you guys pay the closing costs, which was about, I put 9k in closing costs. Well, this was my real estate agent that put up this contract, but of course we talked, we went back and forth, we communicated so that we'll make sure we're on the same page. And yeah, that was the contract that we do. So usually, if I can get the closing costs to be paid by the seller, that is an amazing thing to do, because it gives you more money to, if you're into investment properties, give you more money to, put into other things, put into other businesses, make a down payment for another investment property that you want to buy, or for another business that you're interested in starting. But guys, yeah, again, this is not financial advice or anything. No, these are actually things that I have learned. So if you need financial advice, please go to your financial advisor to actually tell you what to do. I hope this video was helpful. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and Leave in the comments what you would like me to do next, and I'll see you guys next time.